Hello YouTube, how you doing today? Wardy is back with another YouTube exclusive. Gotta start this one off with a little bit of an apology. I didn't get a YouTube video out on Saturday. Unfortunately, some stuff came up in life and the thing I recorded got messed up and I fucked it up and it just wasn't pretty, is the straight up honest answer. So I didn't get to upload on Saturday and I don't actually really know how to tell you guys that stuff went wrong and this and that. So I do apologize for that, and I've wanted to get another video up since then, but then I just haven't really had much to cast, so I was just waiting for the Olimoleague and just going to go back into our schedule of Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from today. I also had a lot of catching up to do just simply because of the fact we had the TLMC last week, the Team Liquid Map Contest Tournament, and I was super busy with that. I had to deal with a lot of player issues and stress with that too, so on top of that, I actually fell behind on the YouTube channel for a day or so, and we actually had no uploads yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, if you guys are watching this the day it came out. So, just an apology for that. We're back on track now, and everything should be set for the upcoming future. With that, let's dive into a pretty fun PvT that we got here from the Olimoleague, played just a few hours ago from my time of talking, so pretty fresh series. This, to the top right-hand side, is the blue Terran player INnoVation. And he's going to be taking on the red Protoss in the bottom left-hand side, Stats, in a TVP best of 3 from the semi-finals of the tournament. So excited to see what happens here. INnoVation and Stats, easily some of my favorite players in StarCraft 2. INnoVation is just, I mean, who isn't a fan of INnoVation if you're a Terran player like I am, as in my main race? You know, he's just one of the best. He's the machine. He is just so good, and he's won so many tournaments. He's consistently at the top end of play. Even when he's slumping, he's just casually like, oh, he's slumping because he isn't top 8 in every tournament right now. That's how good he is. Stats, on the other hand, an absolute, an awesome player. I met him at Katowice a couple of years ago now, and he is so much fun. He's been learning a little bit of English, so he's very fun to interact with. He's very friendly, and just in general, he's one of these players who's very easy to cheer for because you do just, you do just kind of fall in love with his persona, right? He's just, you know, he's happy. If you ever watch his stream, he's always really happy and stuff as well. And he's always having a little bit of a fun time. He's not afraid to be a little bit cheeky. And these guys having a little bit of a chat here. INnoVation asking what Stats is up to as he found that probe hiding across the map. As the Reaper will come in and get a little bit of a scout down, chased away by this Adept. And the Sentry on the way up right now as well. Just as we get into this, of course, guys, just going to do the usual YouTube thing. If you like this video and you're excited to see more games from these guys, INnoVation, Stats, and all the rest, then do consider hitting us up with a like, a comment, or maybe even subscribing to the channel, because I do, well, we usually do upload these videos pretty regularly. And it'd be great for you to see when the rest of them go up here as we continue to grow the YouTube, putting a lot of work into it and all of that good stuff. If you've got any feedback for the YouTube channel as well, stuff you'd like to see, I'm always down to hear that. Just hit me up in the comments down below. I'm pretty much always going to get back to you as these Korean players continue to banter on a little bit. Always great when you have Crank in the game to translate a little bit. Stats is just keeping INnoVation in check here as we do see a hallucination starting to head across the map. 3.5 minutes in, you're probably yelling in your head, Wardy, talk about the build orders! It is a pretty regular 1-1-1 from INnoVation. The Cyclone on the way up is something we haven't seen as much of in TVP. I assume this is because he's only just now seen the Blink Stalker, or the most likely to be Blink Stalker setup, the Twilight Council, getting that Blink up and running, with a Robo Facility coming down to follow up. The Cyclone is generally very good if you go up against an Oracle or so, for example. But against sort of Stalkers, well, Siege Tanks are generally just going to be the much better option. You actually see right away here, the factory makes a move away from the Tech Lab to give space for the barracks. Looks as though another Rax will come up here as well. So there'll be 2 barracks on Tech Labs. That will allow for Sim and Combat Shields to come up at the same time. And as this Raven comes into play, the factory is just off to the side, waiting to see, well, what am I going to do next here? What am I going to build? As you see that Cyclone locks on, and we do see the Stalkers taking a bit of damage, but the Cyclone just backing away. Again, generally the Cyclone doesn't add too much on against Blink Stalkers because you can blink on top of it very easily, so you can't be aggressive with it. And even defensively, it feels very easily picked off just because of the way those Stalkers can fight. Obviously, if you get locked onto, you blink away. It just doesn't really do too much. The Cyclone, just to cover his tracks here early on as the Raven finishes, this obviously opens up a lot of choices in terms of Interference Matrix, Order Turret, Anti-Armor Missile, and those can all be used in very fun ways against Protoss players. We'll see that and how he uses that in a little while. as the Duke barracks do get in for their upgrades. The factory and the starport will probably at this point start up reactors and just go in towards Widowmine and medevac production. It's all pretty standard really from INnoVation here. A little bit of bio. He added on a couple of Marauders pretty quick once he got into these tech labs. Obviously, if you know it's Blink Stalkers, then a few Marauders are going to go a long way in helping to put out the damage against those. Stat's not being overly aggressive with his early gateway units, however. He is going into a third Nexus up on the top side, so drop this down. He's already gone into the Robo Bay and Colossus tag. Usually when you see super fast Colossus like this, you don't see it off of 3 bases. You usually hold back on 2 bases for a while, just because when you're on 2 bases, the Colossus are very good at defending. Stretching out at 3 when there's only 1 or 2 Colossus, and you just don't really have what you need to defend against the Terran onslaught of attack. So we'll see what Stats does about that very shortly, because I feel he's still being greedy. He's going into the +1 upgrade as well. He's also dropping Templar Archives already. All of this just off of the 3 gateways. It just feels like this push of INnoVation has so much potential to it. And against Colossus, that Raven, it's going to come in and drop the Interference Matrix. And if a Colossus gets Matrixed, all of a sudden it can't attack. And oftentimes it'll derp forwards and, you know, I want to attack you, but I can't because I'm on a Matrix. And then it's like, oh, well, I just wander into the army because I'm trying to get close enough to attack. So it just seems a little bit silly in that regard. And the Cyclone being targeted here has got a lock on and gets some good damage done. Those few Stalkers just continue to blink away. Obviously not the sort of numbers to really keep INnoVation at bay at all. Now we do see a High Templar's just been warped in, drops it, or jumps it up into the Warp Prism. What on earth is he looking for? The feedback on the Raven could be huge! He hits it! Interference Matrix on the missile, on the Warp Prism instead. Well, that's obviously not going to be as influential as if it was double Matrix on the Colossus. That was actually insane, because if he doesn't get that High Templar feedback on the Raven, I actually just think the couple of Colossus get put in that Matrix, and then this army is nowhere near large enough to fight. And by the time the Colossus are out of Matrix, the Bio will just be on top of it and have plenty to fight. That's actually a really sick play by Stats, and so far, it looks like it's the only reason he's added a Templar Archives on. He has not built another High Templar yet, he has not started Storm, and even INnoVation can't believe it. What a play with the High Templar. One High Templar hits that feedback, and INnoVation's push is somewhat nullified here, as now he goes dropping into the back of this main base. Widowmine will burrow down, a couple of Stalkers taking some hits. And another Widowmine going to get some warping in Zealots. That's nice. Takes away a lot of the tankiness in this army. The other 2 medevacs cruising around looking for opportunities, but they're not going to find it. Units in position on the natural. The Colossus in the main base has been killed off. I mean, a few Marauders left over here. What were you expecting? Is now already seeing just why going up to the 3 bases as Stats so early is so risky in this scenario. Even if he's held off that first push, these couple of drops are really starting to pick him apart, and INnoVation just keeping units alive. He's forced to recall here, which is one that's Chrono Boost to come out on probes to rebuild what he's lost in recent times. 13 probes haven't gone down. Doesn't exactly leave Stats in the strongest of positions, so INnoVation absolutely slain here in game number 1. Apparently, again, like I just love Crank's translation, because you really get the feeling that these guys are like, what's going on? Stats is like, how are you beating me? Pretty crazy, as we do see Inno back out into the center of the map here to have a look, to try and do more, honestly. I mean, this bio drop still to the top, so you're still able to split Stats up a little bit. Stats' map control is just non-existent. He has like 1 observer up on this top side to watch for this group of units coming in. Outside of that, he just has absolutely nothing. He does see this at least, but he has no idea about the army moving on the bottom side. And honestly, as this bio comes in, you kite away a little bit. I mean, you can even fight here a little if you want to, but the Colossus will clean up. It's just a big drop into the main base from INnoVation. The low health medevac didn't even have much in it, so Inno doesn't lose much as it gets sniped down. And again, where are the Colossus to really clean this up? I mean, the Zealots buying some time, but as soon as the Zealots go down, those Stalkers will melt, and the bio makes its way forward. Now, it's on top of the Robo facility here, so there's that real potential to stop any further Colossus production. He's going to turn on the Colossus now, and he does find one of them, and he is going to keep on fighting here. There's only a couple of Stalkers left, but also only 2 Marauders. It's still good fights from Inno. I mean, he cleaned up the entire army of Stats for his own army, but it was only bio units, and those bio units are so easily rebuilt in comparison to having a rebuild Colossus, which takes such a long time. Stalkers are very expensive too. And you go back home, look at INnoVation's army. It's already set up into a huge amount of bio, extra Liberators as well. And he's going to get ready to push across the map one more time. In fact, he's going to load up the entire army into those medevacs once again. A bit risky if those Stalkers were out on the map again, perhaps, but At the end of the day, why would Stats be out on the map? He has no reason to be. He needs to stay defensive, and he needs to try and find a way to pull this back a little bit as the Stalkers sat in the main base. Medevac's going to go boosting forwards. Well, he does see the Stalkers there, so he'll try and avoid and go elsewhere. He does have the Liberators to help create sort of areas where you can and cannot attack. Knowing the Stalkers in the main, he actually just sets the Liberators up to kind of cover the natural wall-off area, so the Stalkers have to come through Liberator fire to be part of this fight. As you can just see, this has turned into a warpath for INnoVation as he comes up the top side. He's on top of the Colossus already. I mean, some Warpers and Micro will keep him alive here as he drops off some units. He just uses them in the liberation zones to keep them safe. Obviously doesn't want to, to lose the bio, then the Warp in the Stalkers to clean the Liberators up for free. Tell you what, those couple of Colossus that are still down on the low ground, they are going to have a little bit of trouble getting up here, although they will be able to now, thanks to the Stalkers that did actually get the damage done as the drop went into the main base. So punishing INnoVation for loading up into the main. And that's why I was thinking INnoVation was trying to make sure he was protecting those Liberators. I mean, more units going forwards now. He loses the Liberators again, though. The bio not there fast enough. And well, now it is just bio against a few Colossus. We do see a Liberator sieged up on the third base. Stats pulling his probes away, losing gateway production at the front as well. And Stats is actually just going to type out GG right here, just saying, yeah, you know, I get it. You've done enough damage. You've really, really hurt me. I'm not recovering from this. You take game number 1. I'll have to fight back in game number 2, which is what we're about to hop on into, guys. So don't go anywhere. I mean, I know it's just a couple seconds, the video continues. I'm not used to this whole YouTube thing, okay? We'll see you in 2 seconds for game 2 of INnoVation and Stats. Welcome to game number 2, as we have spawning in on the top right-hand side of year 0. Our blue Protoss player representing Splice, this is Stats. And in the top left-hand side, our red Terran INnoVation. He's on a team which has a clan tag REC at the moment. Now, I actually don't know much about that, but it is very possible that he has joined a Chinese team as part of the upcoming Chinese Pro League. That is something we'll have to watch out for here. And just try and figure out. I'm just coming in and casting this and seeing this for the first time, so that's what my assumption would be, because that's where a lot of the Korean players have been going. Dia just joined Newbie the other day, for example, joining Scarlet and Time on that team. And this Chinese Pro League seems to be some pretty serious business, so definitely one to watch out for as you see these SCVs mining away. And our first probe of the game from Stats heading across towards the upper left-hand side to see what's going on. So probe coming into the upper left wants to have a little bit of a scout here, as you see that gateway from Stats dropping down in the main base. Here in game number 2, honestly, the early game from Stats last time went well with that Raven getting feedbacked. That was a huge shutdown on the initial push. But then the drop play really picked Stats apart, and I just can't help but feel 3 bases that fast with Colossus opens you up to that. And if you let yourself, leave yourself an opening for the Terran to use right away, they will abuse it, and then it just gets more and more difficult, and that avalanche effect begins where, first you lose a couple probes, and the next drop does a bit more damage because you're out of position. Then you're out of position, and as you get there late to clean it up, the next drop's already in your base, and you're recalling over to try and deal with it, but then your recall's on cooldown, so it doesn't help you the next time it happens. And it just gets to that point where, INnoVation made all the right decisions. He made Liberators rather than Vikings. He knew he could just brute force this army in the end. There was a couple of moments where maybe he left the Liberators alone and it would have been better to wait for the reinforcements then drop into the main base, because it really gave Stats a chance to maybe clean the Liberator count up. But obviously it still didn't matter. That was the sort of position that INnoVation was in. Very strong one. And obviously able to clean up that first game. Let's see what Stats will change for game number 2 then, as we see the Nexus just about to complete here from our Protoss. That Cybernex called the Warp Gate on the way up, going to be seen in depth. Chrono boosting out of the gateway as well. And for some reason, Stats has 2 probes AFK right here. It's obviously a mistake, because even if you were about to build something, you wouldn't put both of them AFK. Okay, he gets the Twilight Council down. Looks like he probably was thinking, you know what, I'll get this probe in position to build my Twilight. Then he was like, wait, I could use this probe. And then he obviously got a bit distracted by the Reaper, which slowed him down right there. The Twilight Council, again, a sentry has just been built too, so probably getting set for that hallucination, just to try and pick up information as to what the Terran player is up to on this game. It's become one of the very popular ways of kind of playing it out, especially because you don't need, this was changes made over a year ago now, but you don't need the Robo facility to deal with Widowmine harassment early game. You don't need that detection, so you don't need a Robo. But a Robo is still very nice to get an observer and to see what's going on. but the hallucination really gives you that option as well. So this early game sentry is something we see a lot of the time, and as he hits 75 energy, I imagine the hallucination will come right on out, head straight across the map, and try and figure out what's happening. There's 2 gateways come up at the front here, Blink as well, so that's a bit of a wall off at the front, so maybe a bit afraid of a potential Hellion run by or so. That would make this a bit easier to hold. Here up the ramp, it's very difficult to do some sort of a siege tank push, which really punishes these gateways for being here. So I don't think Stats is all too worried about anything like that, as the Reaper just chilling out to the bottom side of the map, waiting to see what will come up next. Is this hallucination being chased around by a couple of Marines? Stats just looping that around a couple different ways. Raven starting up from INnoVation right now in the main base, so very similar to the last game. However, this game he doesn't go into a cyclone, he goes into a siege tank, which is a lot more suggestive of the idea that, hey, I'm going to be very aggressive very early perhaps, because I've got Marines tank and a Raven to push with, but he's also already adding on the extra barracks, so we might only see the single tank just for safety, and then swapping those barracks onto the tech labs and just looking for a larger push a little bit later. If that's the case, and these upgrades do start right away here, which I think they will, the barracks is finished up, okay, no, not going to happen. Going to start a second tank. I was going to say, if he does do that, he's probably still going to commit quite heavily into further tank production, just to really power up that upcoming push. So he's just not going to go into super heavily. That's the thing though, because if you want to continue into very heavy tank production, you're not going to have the gas to start up both of these upgrades at the exact same time either. So it might just be a thing of figuring out, okay, he just wants 2 tanks, then he's going to swap this barracks onto it. Okay. And he's setting up a tank in each base as well, so really just making sure he's safe here early on. Okay, we'll see how many more tanks he builds then. It is going to be a reactor on the factory next. Okay, interesting. So it's not going to be like an all-out, I'm going to build loads of tanks to help out my push, but it's definitely going to be a little bit of power in there with those 2 tanks. Just a very different approach to what we saw in that first game, as we see Stats, well, he's just going to replicate what he did in that first game. We see the 3rd base coming up at the exact same time in the Colossus player getting set to go. This map is a little bit larger when it comes to kind of pushing across base to base. It's actually a very large map, this one. You can definitely see some much longer macro games on it, especially some split map scenarios where you can get 4 to 5 bases without really having to extend yourself too much. And that can really help you to kind of extend the game out. As this hallucinated Phoenix sees what's going on. So 2 tanks up. Again, I mean, the Cyclone last game did absolutely nothing, so the fact that Stats does the same build here, it means that skipping the Cyclone is absolutely a positive thing to do. It is not going to be costing you anything at all, and those tanks are way better for the push, so it really doesn't give INnoVation a bit more power here, and he's still going to have the 2 medevacs here ready in time for this bio to get going. He isn't going to be too slowed down at all, actually. I wouldn't say it's going to hit any later than the last attack hit, as we do see these units starting to press forwards. Now, last time Stats added on that Templar Archives, got a single High Templar for that feedback, and then actually never used that Templar Archives again until the very end of the game when he started up Storm. That's just like an example of just how cool that move was. You can see this bio pressing in. These Stalkers being chased away out to the center of the map. A couple of Marines already dropping down, a couple of medevacs boosting forwards as well to join up with these other units too. Now, Widowmine's getting a little bit ahead of itself, and it will go down, so a little bit of a shame there, but I mean, these 4 Stalkers, considering there's only 4 of them, they've killed 2 Widowmines now, a few Marines, starts finding some insane value so far here. INnoVation will scan a little bit ahead, just get a rough idea as to where that army is. Stats is going to greet this right down on the low ground. There's that single High Templar in the Warp Prism once again. I love that he's doing this just to deal with the Raven, seemingly. INnoVation isn't going to press forwards, though, so he's just going to be instead dropping. He actually has 2 medevacs up the top with reinforcements in, so he's actually going to put a pretty powerful push into the main base, and then this army might come in a little bit later over here. He even brings the Raven up to the main base, so here we go. The bio going to start dropping down. It'll be supported by Widowmines. That Raven, of course, going to be in play as well. Let's see what it's able to hit the interference matrix on then. I mean, again, the Colossus would be a big target. There is 3 of them. Here comes the High Templar, though. It's going to try and feedback it. The Warp Prism is going to be hit by the interference matrix, and it wasn't able to pick that High Templar back up. Now the Colossus is going to get matrix, but it's too late. The damage was already done. But High Templar just forced the Raven away, and by the time the bio was able to get rid of the High Templar and remove the threat, too much bio had already dropped down, and so there was just no real way the Raven was going to be able to turn that around on its own. So good defense by Stats, and if you thought the defense in the first game was cool, this second defense was very cool because it's a similar idea, but it obviously played out very differently. And you can just see the way he was able to, even though he didn't hit the feedback, it still did so much for him. That's awesome, as now Stats pushing into the center of the map. He still does have a full energy high tempo. It's not going to do anything at all here. I must say that INnoVation must have wasted a little bit of damage time here and there. Like, he put a lot of damage onto the Warp Prism, only to not kill it. Maybe he could have targeted down the High Templar a bit faster with the bio units and then brought the Raven in a little bit sooner. It just feels like a couple of little things went, didn't quite go his way. Stats now with 4 Colossus ready to push forwards. I mean, there's a couple of siege tanks here, but that's about it with the Raven to try and hold this off. First Liberators are coming in, which will help a little bit. No way can you drop this and get feedback before the siege tank is just instant kill that High Templar. So you're going to have to push in with the rest of the army and let them take the tank shots before the High Templar hits the feedback. Well, and of course, your army is going to be in threat of being hit by the Raven. Look how far back INnoVation is keeping that Raven. He knows what Stats is trying to get up to here. I feel like the entire narrative of this series is coming down to the High Templar in the Warp Prism. That's a good name for a book, right? Good game for a novel. The Templar in the Prison. It's like some long epic saga about one man who thought he could save the world. No one believed him. And then his feedback changed everything. He gave Protoss... he just gave the entire Protoss race more hope for the future. Okay, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's look at this. The factory flying up here actually means that he's not building any more factory units. So instead of continuing to Widowmine production, INnoVation has decided to go into just pure Liberator. 4 Liberators coming out at a time. We see a few Marauders on the way up here from INnoVation as well. As there's a little bit of Bioforce coming through the top side of this here. He's going to fly through the Observer. And he's just going to go for similar to play to before. I would be surprised if Stats didn't recall to deal with this, but he doesn't have the energy to recall, so that's why. Hits the feedback on the Raven with the High Templar, he warps in. Liberators will still be able to siege up here. Meanwhile, an army moving down to the bottom to try and hit this third base. Well, this main is actually going to drop down pretty quickly. Now, Stats just holding back. He's got a very high-tech army. I feel like he should be able to deal with this as he does blink in. The Stalkers start to target down the Liberators. The Bio trying to kite back, but he will just lift up and get out of there. And the Medivacs will be okay, but obviously losing all the Liberators. Now a stim into the third, but Stats knows it's coming. He recalls over. Oh, but he comes back into the main. INnoVation. What a play, because suddenly Stats is completely out of position. Oh, and INnoVation is going to abuse that hard as he picks off the pylon, comes in to target down the Templar Archives. Templar Archives gets picked off as well. Another couple of pylons in some trouble. Now he'll just lift up and back away again. And he also backed away with this army after seeing that recall. Stats will continue to try and chase it down. Stalkers and Zealots coming in to hunt this. We're going to be seeing, oh, but 4 Medivacs. One of them goes down. The other one had units inside still too as he drops off onto the 4th phase. INnoVation is dealing a heck of a lot of economic damage at the moment, but is it enough to transition back at home and to survive a push even? Like right now he doesn't have a lot of units here. Stats has a lot of units across the map, as Stalkers will be able to clean up these last few Medivacs now. I don't believe these units should be able to get out, but actually it drops enough off to be able to save them. So we'll force the Stalkers back for a moment, but obviously the rest of the Colossus are here. So Stats is going to push this away. Stalkers have that blink and will blink in, doesn't quite find the Medivac however. Man, Stats and INnoVation's play here is absolutely intoxicating. It's so fun to watch. I love that move back into the main of the Medivacs as the huge recall comes down to respond to the army on the bottom side. Some terrific army movement and decision making by these players, and they're really just... They keep on kind of just getting one step ahead of the other one, right? It's not just one player who's mind gaming the next. It's INnoVation's, you know, it's Stats saying, aha, I know about your push on my third base. INnoVation's like, oh, cool, but I know you've overreacted, and boom, I'm back in the main, right? Really cool to see that in action here as we do see Stats pressing through the center of the map. Liberators sieging up once again. That's a lot of Liberators to fight. That's not easy. As the army now actually split up in a couple different directions. Here we go. 2 of the 4 Colossus already in the fight. The other 2 just now showing up. Stalkers blinking in on the top side. Blinking in at the front, but they're blocking the Zealots. However, it seems like the Bio going down too quickly to the Colossus. And as extra Stalkers get warped in, they should be enough to clean this up. The last few Liberators going to start going down. It's still kind of close on those Stalkers. We'll get them out of the Liberator range. Now they have to reposition, but by then, there's only going to be 1 Liberator left. And the Colossus still doing massive damage here, and INnoVation just has no way to actually kill these Colossus. It was close with the way that all these Stalkers went down. If INnoVation had somehow been able to kill this Warp Prism during the fight, the Stalker reinforcement would have been there, and the Liberators would have stood tall, and really mattered. In the end, it just wasn't quite enough. And INnoVation with the question mark as his third base gets taken down by Colossus lasers. The supply depot is going to drop down too, and it looks as though Stats is going to tie up this series 1-1 in the best of 3. Again, great stuff by these guys. We see a few more Stalkers, a couple extra Zealots warping in. Just going to push down to the 4th base as well as INnoVation. I mean, INnoVation probably thinks he's not in that bad a spot, right? He killed the main base, for example, and all of this. He did good damage across the map, and I wouldn't say he traded inefficiently as he dives in for the Colossus. Warp Prison Micro finally saves the last couple, and as INnoVation loses the unit, Stats will take game 2 and tie our series up here 1-1. Great game on year 0. So many cool plays. I'm just excited for the template in the Prism Part 3, which is coming up in a moment as we enter our third. Okay. Game 3. Bottom right, INnoVation, our blue Terran player. Top left, our red Protoss Stats. And we go into this one to see who is going to close it out. To take this series. This Olimoleague was pretty stacked up. I'm probably going to cast games from this for the rest of the week in terms of the YouTube exclusives. Depends if I can get my hands on any of the replays. Next week, remember, is Katowice. So I'm going to be casting... I'm going to be not casting that, of course, and it's going to be kind of hard for me to cast, so there's a couple of things I'm going to try and get, but what I was going to say is I'm going to be casting some of the replays from Katowice that don't get cast on the mainstream, etc. And we'll be doing that for our YouTube exclusives for a little while after Katowice, because I'm pretty sure there'll be some amazing series to get our hands on there, from the open bracket, which is stacked, through to the group stages, which is stacked as well. I know all the group stage games do get broadcast across mainstream, A stream, B stream, C stream, but obviously there'll be some games which I haven't cast, so I'll put that out for you guys. And that's kind of the plan for our exclusives for the next couple of weeks at least, so hopefully you guys excited for a bit of that. As you see, Stats coming forwards and starting to nibble away at this SCV. So these guys having a little bit of a chat here. Wasn't actually paying too much attention as to what's going on. Oops. Can't look at the chat log without pausing the game, so let's not do that. As these guys having a little bit of discussion here early on. I think some INnoVation said something like, or Stats gave him some advice on how to play, and he's like, I don't know how I lose to you. He's like, yeah, you're kind of bad. And Stats is just laughing at that a little bit, apparently. Alright, well, enough shenanigans and silliness in the early stages. We do see the command center dropping down in the natural expansion, so getting that set up and ready to roll. Both plays with the early expansion here on King's Cove. I think the largest map in the map pool at the moment, although Year Zero does give it a run for its money. It's just it's large in a different way. But this map really truly is like in this map game, in this situation, it's insane how big this map is. And for the pros player to get up to 3 bases so easily with only a couple of ramps to defend, well, I'm intrigued to see what INnoVation does to maybe try and disrupt that 3 base from coming up, because Stats has gotten to 3 bases fairly easily here each game so far, and INnoVation has then tried to punish it a little bit later on with that, Stim push. And by the time Stim has done it 6-ish, 7-ish minutes in game, I really feel like if you want to stop the pros play on this map, you have to hit before then, because by 6 or 7 minutes, the 3 bases are set up, you're defending as the pros, and it's very difficult to find a way to deal damage as the Terran. So, in that regard, you're going to have to look at this and be like, okay, well, do I attack a bit earlier? Can INnoVation create an attack that goes in a bit earlier here? It's still a large map, so it's difficult to push across. Does he maybe try and meet macro with macro? Well, so far, it's still going to be that 1-1-1 setup. The barracks, the factory, and the starport. The very typical first few structures to come on down there. No surprises at all. As the Twilight Council go to finish up. And again, the Stalker popping out. Coming out over to the side with this sentry, so going to be hanging out with that. Because we do have that warp gate just about 75% of the way done. The Reaper gets taken down as INnoVation. Obviously not too happy about that. The host nation coming across the map. I mean, the thing is, Stats is just doing the exact thing every single time here. As we're going to be seeing 2 more gates on the way up. And a few Marines just sat in the front as well. Barracks. Another rack's being placed on down. And, well, there is the Raven on its way out the factory. The tech lab on it. Probably a siege shank once again, right? Unless he really feels like it might be a switch back in towards something else. Ooh, okay. He's going to lift the factory up right away. So he doesn't even build anything with the factory. So we've really seen 3 different ways throughout this series now of INnoVation's way of utilizing this factory in the early stages. So that already is pretty interesting as we see those 3 Marines from INnoVation pressing forwards. Second Rax finishes up, jumps over to the tech lab here. Third rack's about halfway done. And second rack drops down, and it's just going to be a stim pack to begin with. That probably means that this starport's going to move off of this tech lab instantly as well, make way for the combat shields. So it's just going to be a similar push. I mean, again, Stats is doing the exact same thing. So if you're trying to learn a very standard Protoss build, these are definitely some good games to look at, right? Because it's the same thing again and again. Third Nexus should come down in the next few seconds here based on what we've seen Stats do so far. It's very hard to pull off correctly though, right? Because he plays with so few Stalkers, which allows him to get the Colossus up fast enough and in high enough numbers to help defend. And then the Warp Prism High Templar is absolutely critical as well for being able to do a little bit more. This time, by the way, the Warp Prism coming out pretty early. I'm not sure if he got this out this fast before. It's likely that he did, because if you want to get the Colossus up, you don't want to build a Warp Prism once you're actually able to build the Colossus, because then it's going to slow down Colossus production. So getting the Warp Prism first is sort of preemptively saying, yep, I'm going to use this. Maybe not right now, but it means that now I can just focus purely on my Colossus, and then I can use that Warp Prism a little bit later on. So INnoVation has the Raven up in the skies, the Bio down on the ground, and already a hallucination of Stats moves into the main base. Have a quick check to see what's going on. A few Marines coming in, and that Phoenix takes a lot of damage, will fall. So hallucinated Phoenix goes down. There's a little bit of Bio from INnoVation setting up. Should be ready to go across the map and see what it can do. There's a few Stalkers, some Stats here just hanging around. There go those Marauders, leaving the charge down. Going to find themselves very narrowly a Stalker to begin with there, but not quite. So that Stalker survives for a little bit. There's INnoVation. Well, leading with those Marauders. Maybe based on this comment that Stats made earlier, that's what he was trying to say something about there. Because Stats said, make sure your Marauders are in the front. Yeah, there you go. Like this, and Stats is like, yeah, like that. Although he does lose a Marauder, and the Stalkers aren't dead just yet. As we are going to be seeing the Raven up in the skies, and a couple of medevacs coming across the map to see what this push can do then. Is there a High Templar in the Warp Prism? There is a Templar Archives, but there's no High Templar at the moment. Uh-oh. Well, he needs that High Templar because we've seen how important it can be. It goes into the Warp Prism right here. The Raven coming forward is going to get the interference matrix on the Prism. High Templar is down. INnoVation kites away. He's going to get the High Templar now, and he hits the Matrix on the Colossus as well. And this is going to start to be that disaster we talked about happening potentially. As, oh, I love it. Hits the Prism with another Matrix, so he can't lift up the Colossus. INnoVation will lift up back away. Oh, a couple of Widow Mines going to clean up some Zealots here too. Stalkers did blink in for the Raven. The Medevac's out alive is now Medevac's towards the natural. And this has already been good damage to the point where you've killed a good amount of army as INnoVation. Now you're going to start pulling Stats apart a little bit. This drop in the natural, drop around the top towards the main base. And where are you meant to go as Widow Mines are going off? Stalkers blink from one Widow Mine into the other. And he's going to lose his entire army over here. And this is just snowballing faster and harder than in game number 1 even. Drop into the main base, and Stats has absolutely nothing to deal with it. Probes are going down. The shield battery, the only thing that's slowing down. Complete death and demise from our Protoss player here. The Robo Babe will fall, so no further Colossus after the current one being built. And well, I mean, I'm sure it's not long until INnoVation gets even more units across the map. Again, a single Colossus here and there just isn't doing enough. Usually they do some good damage, getting the bio units low, and then the gateway units can finish up. But that just didn't happen at all right here as INnoVation closes out the series 2-1. I mean, a really cool example this series of, even though it was the same build more or less each time by both players, Stats' build was the same definitely. INnoVation's was a little bit different because of the way he got the Cyclone, then 2 tanks, and nothing at all in the third game off the factory. This was a really cool little example of just similar builds going up against each other and having very different outcomes, because we did see 3 very different games. We saw the game here just now where INnoVation rolled over his opponent, no problem at all. Kind of like I expected with what Stats was doing since game 1. We had that second game where Stats was able to hold out, drag it out, claw it out, and get that longer macro game, which went in his favor. In the first game, of course, we saw Stats able to defend nicely, but INnoVation still able to abuse and overrun and just use that Terran micro potential to get ahead. GG's, guys. Great series here today. Again, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that comment button. Leave us a little note. Let me know what you thought of it. Do not forget to like the video as well. It goes a long way to helping out. And of course, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, do consider subscribing. Putting up these YouTubes every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday on the exclusives, as well as throughout the week, 3 times a day, we upload catch-ups from our stream, so VODs, matches that you might have missed out on if you don't watch the live stream. So check all of that out, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and the next YouTube exclusive will be coming up